won't brag on him for just a couple minutes. I hope he doesn't mind. Walter is great at stepping up to any challenge or any task whatsoever. He is busy at the Student Center. He's everywhere. He's doing Bible studies with other college students. He is reading the Bible. He is teaching. He is leading devotionals at the Student Center. If you haven't checked out the new website, utcchristianstudentcenter.com, phenomenal website. Walter is responsible for every bit of that. So he's got his hands in everything. He is busy about God's Word. And so I am privileged, encouraged, and uplifted to hear what Walter has to say to us tonight.
You have to bear with me here. I'm new with this mic thing. But I've been told it's... Can we hear it? Can we get it? All right. I appreciate that kind introduction. I don't know if you know this, but I don't take compliments very well. I like compliments, but I don't take them very well. So I'm just sitting down here like, that's nice. That's awesome. I wish I could do that kid. But, no, Trevor couldn't be with us tonight because he had to work, so it's my show tonight. And I hope you don't mind me being down here. And I've told a lot of people this, that I don't like podiums because I feel separated from the audience. So I wanted to be down here. If we could move, never mind. But I like being down here so I can be close to you. And last Tuesday, I did a Devo on faith. And it was because it's something that I feel like we all struggle with. I know I've been struggling with it lately. And it's something we don't really want to admit to. Because if you're a good Christian, you don't want to admit that you're struggling with your faith. So I was thinking, what should I do for this sermon? And I think it's something that goes right along with faith, and it's called God's providence. And it's one of those ways that you can look and see what God has done to improve your faith. You see that all these things that have happened in your life, the exact things that happened to get you where you are today, had to be for a reason. There's a saying that you don't believe in coincidences. I don't know if I go full-hearted with that statement, but it works here tonight. So there's no such thing as this coincidence. And that's because God has a hand in everything. And to start off tonight, I want to tell a little bit about myself. I know a lot of you know me, especially this group up here, but I almost didn't come to Chattanooga. Well, I almost didn't come back to Chattanooga for various reasons. But when I started off, I was in high school, my senior year. I was looking around for colleges. I had good grades, had a good ACT. I was just looking around, and I only applied to 3 colleges. I don't know why I only applied to 3 colleges, but I only applied to 3. Austin Peay, here, and Freed-Hardeman. I got into all 3, but Austin Peay was too close to home. Freed-Hardeman was in the middle of nowhere, and, well, I like Chattanooga, so let's go to Chattanooga. But what I'm not telling you is all the money was at other schools. Like, I was going to get paid to go to Austin Peay. I was going to get paid to go to Freed-Hardeman. I had to pay to come here. So I look back and I think, why did I choose Chattanooga? And there was 2 reasons I chose Chattanooga. One was the honors program. I wanted to get into the honors program here because they had a great honors program. Went to the introduction week and didn't get in the honors program. So that's one down. Second reason is, well, we have a marching band here, and they don't have that at Freed-Hardeman. So I'll come here. I got to marching band, and I hated marching band. My first year. My second year, I liked it. But my first year was rough. But then I came and I did a campus tour here. I did a tour at Austin Peay, I did a tour here. And everybody told me, Chattanooga has a great, great campus. It's beautiful. You'll love it. I got here, I'm like, that's it. No, this is not a beautiful campus. It was because of all the construction. I realized that there just wasn't much grass. And I like grass on campus. But I was like, this is not as beautiful as everybody describes to me. But I got my roommate, one of my best friends from back home, I talked him into coming with me, and we both came down here our freshman year, and we stayed in South Campus. And I chose to come here, and I stayed in South Campus, and then I had lovely roommates my freshman year. And that was a fun time. I'll have to tell you about it afterwards if you really want to know, but it was not fun freshman year. And I know your freshman year anywhere, anybody's not going to have a bunch of fun. But there was things that happened my freshman year with my roommates that I really didn't appreciate. And it got to the point where my roommate from back home, his name was Dominic. And if you've ever dealt with the housing department here at UTC, you know it's awful. Just awful. Other departments on campus are great. Housing department, not great. Not great at all. So my best friend from back home, he basically got almost kicked out of school, not for anything he did, just because he tried to get a place to live the next year, our sophomore year, and they were like, nope, we can't give you a place. And then he got here to his classes, and they're like, why are you here? He's like, I'm signed up for classes. And they're like, no, you're not. So like they had him knocked out of half of his classes, so he couldn't stay a full-time student. And he got sent back home, and I was just mad at that. I was livid at UTC. I'm like, I'm going back to Austin Peay. I'm going to transfer back to Austin Peay because this place doesn't treat me well, and I don't like this place. And really, the only thing that was keeping me here, because remember, I don't like marching band anymore. I didn't get into the honors program, and the only thing that's really keeping me here is Central. And I was like, I'm going back to Austin Peay. I had just taken a summer class there. I loved the campus. I fell in love with it, and there was grass everywhere. And I'm like, I'm transferring back. So I came here my sophomore year, the first semester, and like over the winter, I'm going to go back to Austin Peay. Then I was like, well, it's really hard to transfer in the middle of the year. I'll give it another semester. And it's really the little things that change your mind. I was eating with Rachel and Melissa one day, and Melissa's like, you know, for someone who Chattanooga supposedly hates, you sure do get a lot of what you want. And we were talking about classes and how I got into classes, and it's really hard to do that in our majors. Ask Miranda, she'll tell you. But and I just stopped and thought about it. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And then I started to realize the reason I was mad at Chattanooga was for what they did to Dominic, not what they did to me. They were treating me pretty well here. So then I called Dad in the next few days. I'm like, I think I might stay because it's a better degree here. I feel like I've made my nest here, and it would be a lot easier for me to stay and do well. So the question came up with, I was still paying like $2,000 a semester to go here. And at Austin Peay, I probably wouldn't have to pay that much because I could live at home. And then I was like, you know, the thought just popped in my head one day. It's like, what if I was a student director? Because the last semester that I stayed here, the student center really became my home. And before that, if you know much about my story, that I really didn't go to the student center much. I didn't associate it. I like Central. I didn't go there. And then I started going the second half of my sophomore year because Jessica really started prompting me to go. And I was like, and it really became my home. And I'm like, I really want to be a student director. And then the rest is history. I'm standing here, and I really, people ask me, do you regret anything? And I say no. I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't go anywhere else. If I got a full ride to Vandy for my undergraduate, I wouldn't go because I want to be here. And it's funny how God's providence led me that way. Like, everything was working against me. I didn't want to come here. Well, I did want to come here at first, but the money was gone. Everything was just against me. And somehow I stayed here, and I hope that I'm having a good influence while I'm here. And you can ask Miranda. She has a very similar story to that. And that's what I want to start out with tonight, is God's providence. And it's a really good faith builder. I'm really bad at looking back behind me and seeing what God has done in my life, because I don't know why I never think to do that, but when you step back and do that, you realize, wow, there really is a God, and there really is. He's working for me. So if you want to turn to Daniel chapter 2, that's what we'll start out tonight. I love this story. The first thing that I think we should know about providence is we've got to realize who's in control. If you're looking at Daniel chapter 2, and you start in verse 31, it says, and the background to the story is the king is Nebuchadnezzar. He's king of Babylon. He's taken over Israel, and they're kind of in captivity, not as much as like the Egyptians, but similar to that. And Nebuchadnezzar's king, and Daniel is a wise man for the king. And Nebuchadnezzar has this dream, and he says, I need somebody who can interpret this dream, but I'm not going to tell you what the dream is. You have to tell me what I dreamed. And that way I know that you're from God and that you're interpreting this correctly. And all his magicians and all the wise men are like, we can't do that. Like, you're asking something unreasonable. So he gets really mad. He's like, kill all the wise men of Israel and throw them all out. And Daniel says, wait a minute. I can do this. God's with me. I'm going to interpret your dream. So if you want to start at verse 31. You, O king, were looking, and behold, there was a single great statue. That statue was large and extraordinary splendor, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of the statue was made of fine gold, and its breast and arms were of silver, and its belly and thighs were of bronze, and its legs of iron, and its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You continued looking until a stone was cut out without hands, and it struck the statue, and its feet of iron and clay, and crushed them. Then the iron and the clay, and the bronze and silver and the gold were crushed all at the same time, and it became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them was found. For the stone was struck in the statue, because a great mountain was filled in the whole earth. That's a weird dream. This king has a dream of a statue. Just that, I don't know if he did anything else in the dream, but he was just admiring this large statue, head of gold, breast of silver, belly of brass, legs of iron, and feet of iron and clay mixed together. Why? I mean, I guess God led him to believe that this was not just an ordinary dream, that this was a sign sent from God. But that's a weird dream to me. But Daniel comes and says, like, I can tell you this dream, and I'm going to interpret it. So here's the interpretation. This was the dream. Now we tell this interpretation before the king. You, O king, are the king of kings, to whom God of the heaven has given the kingdom and the power, and the strength and glory. And wherever the sons of men may dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hand, and has caused you to rule over them all. You are the head of gold. So Daniel says, we're going to start out with the head of gold. And that's you, Nebuchadnezzar. That's Babylon by extension. And he says, you have this great power. God has given you this power to be ruler over all of Babylon. And I think it's interesting to point out here, this is a king that doesn't acknowledge God yet. He will in the next few chapters. But Daniel's standing before him, and he says, you are the head of gold because of God. And he is the one that gave you that power. And if you don't know much about Babylon, Babylon was, at the height of its day, a strong fortress. Like the walls, they say on the top of the walls you could run 2 chariots across them, and nobody ever thought you could ever defeat Babylon because it was such a structured fortress. And he says, after you there will rise another kingdom inferior to you, then another third kingdom of bronze which will rule over all the earth. And if this prophecy doesn't affirm that the Bible is from God, I don't know what will, because I love this prophecy right here. He says the next kingdom is going to be inferior to you. In the next few chapters, you'll see that Darius the Mede comes and takes over his kingdom, the kingdom of Babylon that nobody thought they could destroy. And he actually digs a canal and diverts the Euphrates so his men can walk across the river and go defeat Babylon, while Nebuchadnezzar and his people were drunk in the house of what was supposed to be the house of God. So he's like, there's a second kingdom that's after you, and that's the breast of silver. It's going to be inferior to you. And the third kingdom, the belly of bronze, is going to be a kingdom that will rule over all the earth. After the Medo-Persian kingdom came Alexander the Great in Greece. And if you know much about history, Alexander the Great was known for his conquering abilities. It says there was none other like him throughout all history of who conquered the world. And he literally took over all the known world at that time to Europeans. Yeah. And Alexander the Great comes in, he's the third king of Greece. And then in verse 40, then there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron crushes and shatters all things. So like iron that breaks in pieces, it will crush and break all these into pieces. In that you saw feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. It will be a divided kingdom, but it will have in its toughness of iron, inasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with common clay. As the toes and feet were partly of iron and partly of pottery, so some of the kingdom will be strong and some of the kingdom will be brittle. And in that you saw iron mixed with the common clay, they will combine with one another in the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. So he's like, there's going to be a fourth kingdom after Greece, and if you can guess what that kingdom is, you're good at history. Rome, I heard it. Rome. And this prophecy is dead on. Like Rome comes out and starts this kingdom like really strong. And like everybody fears the Romans. They have these military tactics that are unmatched by the rest of the world. And everybody's just in fear of Rome. But it says the feet and the toes were made of iron and clay, and it's going to be brittle. And if you know anything about the downfall of Rome, it fell because of its internal problems. And some of Rome was weak and some of it was strong. And all the internal stuff basically collapsed in on itself. And this prophecy right here is dead on. This was written many, many, many years before any of this came to place. And it's one of the apologetic things I like to use to show that the Bible is from God. But this is the important part. In verse 44 it says, "In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed. And in that kingdom will not be left for another people. And it will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will endure itself forever. Inasmuch as you saw the stone that was cut out from the mountain without hands, that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, the gold, the great God has made known to the king that it will take place in the future. So the dream is true and the interpretation is trustworthy." In the days of those kingdoms, in the Roman kingdom, is when the God of heaven will set up his own kingdom. And we know what that kingdom was. It's the church. Because Jesus came in the time of the Roman kingdom. And since the Roman kingdom, there hasn't been a world kingdom since then. Yeah. But the church and Jesus came during the Roman kingdom, and God set up his kingdom during that last kingdom. And what I like to pull from this whole story here is God has had this plan from the beginning. Like the different kingdoms coming to pass and different dynasties, God's known that's going to happen from the beginning of time. It was his plan for that to happen. And Babylon was taken over by the Medo-Persians, and the Israelites could see that as a good or a bad thing, but it was God's plan. No matter whether it was good or bad, it was God's plan. And in verse 44, we see the reason for his plan when it says, "In the days of those kingdoms, I will set up my own kingdom." So the church was not a plan B. The church was not, "Oh, my people have messed up, now I've got to scramble to get something else that's just a Band-Aid for this." The church has been in God's plan since the beginning too. Or else he wouldn't have said, "In those days I will set up my own kingdom." And I also like to pull out that God can use people, whether they're good or evil, to accomplish his will. Sometimes we put a box around God and we say our God is this big. But God is infinitely larger than that. And he can use people, whether good or evil, to accomplish his will. Isaiah makes a good note of this in Isaiah 46, starting in verse 9. It says, "Remember the former things of the long past, for I am God, and there is no other. I am God, there is no other, there is no one like me, declaring from the end to the beginning, and from the ancient times, these things which have been done, saying, my purpose will be established, and I will accomplish my good pleasure." My purpose will be established. There's no maybe if these humans do this right, my purpose is going to carry out. Or maybe if my prophets speak what they need to speak. Or maybe if people go and follow Jesus, then my plan will be established. My purpose will be established. And I will accomplish my good pleasure. Calling of a bird and pray from the east, and the man of my purpose from a far country. Truly I have spoken. Truly I will bring it to pass. I have planned it, and surely I will do it. Listen to me, you stubborn-minded, who are far from righteousness. I bring my righteousness, it is not far off. My salvation will not delay. And I will grant salvation in Zion, and my glory for Israel. So God's plan of salvation has been from the beginning. And that brings me to my second point on God's providence is we have to learn to trust in God's providence. And this is a big leap for most of us. I know for me, I've always not had that sense of trust. I'm getting there. I want to get there. But we have to trust that God's providence is going to work out for us. And even in times of bad times, things that you can't, it looks like nothing can get any worse. That God still has a plan for us, and His providence is still going to prevail. There's no maybe with God. It's going to. And if His providence is going to prevail, and He's planned all these things, and He's planned the world kingdoms from the beginning for His church, then what are we worried about? One of my favorite passages of Scripture is in Matthew 6. If you want to turn to Matthew 6 at verse 25. And I talk a lot with people about them worrying and them being anxious or so, especially with my mother. She every time I go home, she likes to be worried and be complaining about something. And I'd like to remind her of this sometimes. I don't usually say it in that context because I don't think that would be a very wise decision. But this is a promise from God, from the mouth of Jesus, that is very comforting. Starting in verse 25, it says, "For this reason I say to you, do not be worried about your life, as to what you will eat or what you will drink, nor for your body, as to what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds in the air. They do not sow, nor do they reap, nor gather in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more than they? And who of you, by being worried, can add a single hour to his life? And why are you worried about clothing? Observe how the lilies of the field grow. They do not toil, nor do they spin. Yet I say to you that not even Solomon, in all his glory, clothed himself like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today and thrown in the furnace tomorrow, how much more will He clothe you, ye of little faith? Do not worry then, saying, what will we eat, or what will we drink, or what will we wear for clothing? For the Gentiles eagerly seek after these things. For your heavenly Father knows that you will need these things. But seek ye first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you.